So, you were right.
I was right. Shall we do the intro and get into it?
Well, I was trying to, yeah.
Oh,
I was trying to lead
have
it.
we started?
we are recorded. We are recording.
Okay.
Unless I use that whole conversation about hair dyes.
Well, some podcasts start with a bit of a organic discussion, but that was quite in depth about something very specific.
Save that for after we get Eero to sponsor us.
Okay, so let's go back to Jack. You were right. How does it feel to be right?
I was half right. I was like 75% right. And do you know what? I feel pretty good about it. I finally kind of accurately predicted an episode of Farscape. So woo.
Yep.
Yeah. I did it. You guys. Thanks. It's been a pleasure. You guys enjoy this. I'm gonna get
Shall we get into it?
Let's get it on. It's time to rock and or roll.
Hi, friends.
Hello, puppets.
Howdy, y'all.
And welcome to Muppet Sex and Trauma. I'm Sara Ezzat. I make the Fat Costume Critic videos on YouTube.
I'm Jack Kramme, editor / right-hand man for Passion of the Nerd and editor for Chipperish Media.
And I'm Josh Gosdin. I'm just a big old nerd.
And that's enough. And that went a whole lot smoother than last time.
Well,
holy shit.
We were ourselves.
That was fun, though.
Introduce ourselves, yeah.
I want to do that again because that was fun.
That was good.
Fun.
Probably the biggest laughs I've had on this. No, actually, no, that's not true. That's not true. We laugh a lot.
Remember Pissing Fire?
Yeah.
Yes, I do. But let's not think about that, or else I won't stop laughing again.
Yeah, there's been some good laughs.
Indeed.
So today we're here to talk about my 3 Crichtons, which, as we said in the beginning, Jack guessed at least fairly correctly.
Well done, Jack. I did it, guys. Thank you very much.
You made it.
I appreciate the love and the support and the validation. Thank you very, very much.
My 3 Crichtons was written by Grant McAloon with a story by Gabrielle Stanton and Harry Worksman Jr. and directed by Catherine Miller, who is, I believe, our first woman director. It's an ordinary day on Moya, with John and Aaron doing some fight flirting in the maintenance bay. But there are no ordinary days on Moya, and oops, here comes a glowy space baseball flying around all around Moya until it finds our boy Crichton. John and Aaron don't have a lot of patience for weird space stuff right now and decide to shoot it. And with that, the glowy baseball expands into a giant, big, green, human-sized hamster ball and sucks up John. The giant green space hamster ball has not only nabbed John, but got itself stuck in Moya's walls. After a bunch more shooting, the ball spits out John. Well, that's good. But oh what, he's not alone. The ball also expels a big hairy creature who takes one look at all the shooting people and scampers off. But not before being injured and bleeding on John. But oddly, the blood appears to be John's. What could be happening? A short time later, Chiana finds the creature in John's quarters. But it's not a creature, it's Cave Buffy. I mean, Touched O'Neill? No, I mean Encino Man. No, it's Neander John. Chiana brings Neander John to meet the others. They're skeptical, but the DNA confirms this is some kind of clone of John. Just as everyone is getting to grips with that bit of news, the ball gets grumpy again and spits out another surprise. Another John. A 3rd Crichton. This one has no hair, too much teeth, a new accent, visible brain wrinkles, and the personality of an Ayn Rand fanboy. John has met the enemy within, and he is obnoxious. Randy and John makes little attempt to hide his disgust at Prime John, and none at all at Neander John. But there isn't time for reflecting, as they've got to go deal with the grumpy ball. After some running around and sciencing, they get things stabilized for the moment. And then the ball gets chatty. It isn't just a big, weird green space ball. It's a big, weird green space ball for science. It was sample collecting. So it is a giant hamster ball, but the samples got loose. Please enclose 1 John, any type. The ball will get even grumpier and suck absolutely everyone and everything in the area. Everyone leaps to the conclusion that Neander John must go. Everyone but Chiana, who's bonded with him. And our John, who wants to find another way. There must be another way. John does his best despite everyone pestering him, but there is no other way, and reluctantly he goes to fetch Neander John. But Chiana has let him go, and so a search begins. But Randian John is busy making other plans. If Neander John isn't around, he'll just take our John. It's simple logic. He is superior. Clearly, after all, he's judging superiority, so that must make him superior. See, that's an objective fact. No bias here. Besides, our John has all that pesky optimism and empathy. Who needs that? Speaking of empathy, John has found his Neander self, literally and figuratively, and he knows he can't just condemn him. Instead, John prepares to sacrifice himself, but not before a little bit of a monologue off with Randy and John. However, it turns out Neander John takes a very direct approach to shutting up Randy and fanboys. A bonk to the head with a big stick. I may or may not approve of this method. John is still preparing to do the sacrifice play, but Neander John is wiser than he looks. He knows this is the time and place for our John and no other. And with that, he boards the big green space hamster ball of science and flies off into the night. John is left thoughtful, and Chiana reminds him that everything he admired about Neander John is already inside him. So
That's what she said. Sorry. I had to. It was like a tick building up inside of me. I had to do it. I'm sorry.
Every time you were saying Randy and John, I was thinking, Randy John? Why not just name me Horny John? It does prefer a Shag John.
I almost called him Randy John in the summary, but I thought that would get a bit confusing.
Also, can I just say, I was planning on referring to him as prehistoric John, but I love Encino John so much more. That is perfect.
Yeah,
you mean Neander John?
I love him. Yeah, Neander John, Encino John, prehistoric John, all just
Cave John.
That fair dude, Cave John, but Encino John, that's great. I like that a lot.
I was referring to Encino Man by that.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. The 90s
That's one of my
movie.
favorite films. Yeah, I love that film.
Neander John is what he was actually called in the script.
Oh, okay.
They called obnoxious John Futuro John.
Okay.
I decided to name him Randy and Fanboy because
Yeah, I see that. Yeah.
I am objective. I am superior. I am bunked to the head.
I've called him futuristic John in my notes here. But speaking of that guy, why did he have a southern drawl? That was very strange to me.
Well, Ben was having fun, is the short answer. There's a lot of whys in Farscape that come down to Ben Browder was having fun. He noticed
it's just an interesting choice.
It is. And can you guess who he was trying to impersonate?
John Wayne? I don't know. No idea.
Josh, could you guess whose accent he was trying to copy?
I was getting Val Kilmer in that one Western.
It was Bill Clinton.
Oh my God.
I did not get Clinton.
He was trying to do Bill Clinton. No, he apparently he said that like so often when they do futuristic whatever, it's always like for some reason has a random English accent.
Yeah. That's what I was expecting. Yeah.
He decided to go more southern and was specifically he was doing his impression of Bill Clinton.
See, I just thought he found a way to talk around the teeth.
Well, there's that too.
Yeah, once again, Farscape is just doing its own thing, and I can appreciate that because I just
It's interesting that the entire thing is ADR.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't spot that.
No, me neither.
That's what they've been doing apparently the entire season. They do everything re-recording the audio separate.
What?
Everybody's dialogue?
Yeah, everybody's dialogue. And I've seen we'll do a reaction to these at some point, but I've seen some of the director's cuts, and it really shows you why, because you can hear the servos in the puppets and the squeaks. And just the audio that they got was just not fixed, good. So they just and you could ADR some and not others, but we know that sounds terrible. So they ADR'd everything.
It's really well done ADR then, because I didn't spot it at all. And I'm usually pretty good with spotting that stuff. But yeah, I guess the set could have been quite echoey too, and it just didn't play with sound very, very well. Yeah,
like they're working in a warehouse. So not a purpose-built set. And the puppets.
Oh, okay.
The puppets are and the Rigel and Pilot have to be ADR anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course.
So it to make it all match up, they do all of it. So he did the ADR with the teeth.
Oh,
that makes sense. That's smart.
Yeah. Or else it would have sounded too unnatural.
Yeah, I guess when we're looking at those teeth, then he's got to get around that.
I can't remember if we've discussed this before, Sara, but do you know, did they have somebody standing off camera doing Rigel's lines just so the actors had something to react to?
The puppeteer did them.
Oh, okay. Cool. Yeah. Because I think that would just make it easier for the rest of the actors to have something to actually respond to.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You need something to respond to. So yeah, they had the puppeteers, and the voice is nothing. You hear again in the director's cuts. They'll show you the difference, and you can totally hear it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because it's entirely different than the voice actors.
Yeah.
But holy shit! This episode, guys. Wow. This is the most philosophical Farscape has been so far, in my opinion. And I'm a big old philosophy nerd, so I loved this. I loved it.
Yeah, I had a blast with it as well. I really enjoyed this episode. See, I was calling him id John, ego John, and super ego John the whole time.
Oh,
that's a cool read too. I think. It's interesting. This plot is so predictable in so many ways, because we've seen it before.
Yeah.
And yet they do really interesting things with it.
They do. It was definitely that kind of Farscapian subversion that I've really been enjoying with the show, that I don't feel like we've gotten a lot of since season 1. Because it was predictable in that I called id John sacrificing himself for sure, but I didn't call id John taking super ego John out on the way out.
Yeah, right. I also obviously I also wasn't expecting the Crichton being split into different stages of evolution, and I think that was pretty subversive in itself. I don't think I've seen that done before in a sort of a this sort of trope, that we've seen many times.
Yeah, it's a combining of two tropes, because there's the cave Buffy trope, and there's the enemy within, or the replacement is where you called it, but the Star Trek one is the enemy within, where Kirk gets split into evil Kirk. And meet Kirk.
It's a season 1 episode of the original series. It's very good.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I thought you were referring to what's his name, Locutus of Borg.
No,
he's
next
that's
generation.
not the trope. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a different thing entirely. But the transporter splitting people into two different parts of their personality was the enemy within. And it's just one of those classic science fiction. I called out also, there's Stargate did it in their first season, one of their early episodes. It was and they were called The Touched. The episode is called The Broca Divide. And of course, there's Encino Man, where the cave guy comes in a different way, but like I think as long as we've been able to do like caveman makeup, which they did an incredible job. Apparently this was a muscle suit with a hair suit on top of it.
At first I wasn't sure if it was Ben Browder. Now clearly it is, because you can tell because of the eyes, but they did a really good job of transforming him. And Ben Browder throughout this entire episode with all of the roles, brilliant performance. I loved his physicality as the Encino John, as the Futuro John, or whatever his name is. He came across as very cold and calculating and very sinister, like from the get-go, and I loved that. Really, really good stuff.
Yeah, he loved playing Neander John, like getting to roll around on the floor, as he was described, and getting physical with him and Chiana and Gigi Edgley doing all their stuff, because they're she does that very physical performance, and then he's getting to play in that space too.
Yeah. It's very different from what he's been able to do thus far. And
did I not tell you that the body doubling thing would make a comeback?
Right.
Yes. When you can do those sorts of things, why not do them? Yeah.
Especially when you do it as well.
Yes. And the thing that I noticed on this watch that I hadn't noticed before is how well the cold open sets up the whole thing, because we have John being self-serving and accusing Aaron of being self-serving in terms of the part from taking the part from his module for her prowler. And then as soon as they're threatened, he says, no, take the thing. Like, so, we have the self-interest and the self-sacrifice dynamic set up in that little interaction with a fight flirting.
That's a really good observation. Yeah.
You just blew my mind a little. That's amazing.
I don't know how many times I've seen this episode before I went, they're setting it up within the fight flirting.
That sequence, that whole opening sequence is so like 90s, early 2000s cheese, but it's so cute and charming. Like, I loved it so much. Like the sort of low frame rate POV stuff, and like the music and the panic and everything. It was so like cheesy, but I loved every second of it. I thought it was really well shot.
It was. Yeah. I liked that the frame from the alien baseball POV was kind of like an eyeball iris.
Yeah.
And it just had this very like, you're being watched. Yeah.
I really loved that. It was just a lot of fun. It made me feel sort of nostalgic in a way, because you don't really see that stuff anymore.
Yeah, there was quite a lot of dated CGI, but also kind of charming. There's kind of then the mix of the practical and the CGI, like the bit where Moya is crumbling and they have to, you can see the green screen. But it's okay,
Yeah, like you don't care. Yeah, it's like I'm not a Doctor Who fan, but that's what people say about Doctor Who. It's like, yeah, it doesn't look good, but it's still great.
This one we had a lot of Doctor Who vibes. I feel like the running and science thing is very Whovian.
Yeah, I'll buy that. That's good stuff. I also really liked the plea for the intricacies and the not the intricacies, the intrinsic nature of humanity from ego John to super ego John. Yeah, that also has Whovian vibes, I feel.
So I read it as a treatise on self-sacrifice and empathy and that sort of thing. You read it as it and superego. Do you want to take the reins and just talk about that a bit?
Well, I don't think they're mutually exclusive, because I was also putting I was ascribing attributes to each of those aspects of John. So, id John, cave John, and Sino John was very much all like instinct and impulse, and one of the biggest instincts that he had was his survival instinct, which is classically characteristic of the id and the amygdala, which is part of the human brain as well. But like him trying to run around and knowing that he was about to be sacrificed and save himself and all that kind of stuff, but then ultimately being the one who saves ego John from having to make the choice. Like, I felt like that was very like base instinct. And it was an interesting commentary on the origin of self-sacrifice, not necessarily being logical or even rational, but it being like emotional and empathetic. That it came from id John. And then superego John was all just cold logic. They even put him in peacekeeper gear, which from the beginning I was like, okay, so he's not going to go well. Was used as a really cool reflection against like both Aaron, who he spent most of the episode with, and the peacekeepers in general. And they're just kind of like, Ubermensch superiority bullshit.
I actually didn't pick up on the peacekeeper outfit, but it really was, yeah.
It was the jacket that he stole in that one episode.
Oh.
Anytime we see black and red in leather.
Yeah, that's bad guys, of course.
Yeah,
but it's distinctly peacekeeper in this series is that, and the cut and the thing. I mean, interestingly, the whole id superego ego thing is generally disproved and generally let go of in psychology, but it works great in storytelling.
It's a beautiful literary tool at this point. It's a horrendous scientific or psychological lens.
Because human brains are much more complicated than that.
Much.
Yeah. My read on it was, this is Farscape doing the trolley problem. That's sort of how I read it, and it's a very for the uninitiated. I mean, most people have heard of it, but it's a thought experiment in ethical philosophy. And it's about a fictional scenario in which an onlooker has the choice to save 5 people in danger from being hit by a trolley by diverting the trolley to kill just one person. And there's like literally limitless versions of it by changing who is on the track and whatnot. And so that's how I read this. Like logical, futuristic, logical John was all like, we kill the cave John because he's the least useful, and that in some ways that might be correct. I don't agree with it, but the cold logical version of it says that that's correct. But like personally though, I don't subscribe to that line of thinking. I don't think I would have had the heart to do it personally. Like if this was my trolley problem, I probably wouldn't have just let us all die, because I just wouldn't have the heart to do that. I don't think, and because I don't think. I hate this idea, and it's even prevalent. Well, not prevalent, but you still see it today that some people sort of compare or They essentially saying that somebody's worth is tied to what they can contribute, what they can like labor or whatever, like what they can contribute to in the world. And like all human life is valuable regardless of like whether they can physically contribute or whatnot,
let's say the word. It's eugenics.
Yeah. Exactly what it is. Yeah. I didn't think of that, but yeah, that's exactly what it is. Yeah, it's eugenics. But I loved. Once it sort of clicked in my head. Oh, this is the trolley problem. I got a little giddy because I'm like, oh, I love this. Like this is great because I love me some ethical philosophy and existential stuff and whatnot. Yeah, this is great episode, guys.
See, maybe I tip my hand by describing him as a Randian fanboy. But like I think for those who may not be initiated, Ayn Rand was a terrible person with a horrible philosophy, which posited that the superior should rule and rise above, and of course the superior was judged to be objective. And it's Nazism, basically. It's eugenics and fascism.
Not that far off it if it's not.
They're all in the same field.
And so many obnoxious white boys read her book in university and become obsessed and think that the righteous thing is to strive to be superior to everyone and to be unemotional. Or quote unemotional, because it is, the thing is to assume that they are objective on the basis of they're the ones who are deciding what objectivity is.
Right.
Yeah, it's incredibly toxic ideology. And that's where I see so-called future John, because I don't think this is the future of humanity at all.
I hope it's not.
It's like he's convinced that he is superior by his own standards. He is convinced he is being logical by his own standards, and we even call him out as being coldly logical, but is this really logic?
No, because it starts with a false assumption.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the assumption is that intellect is all that matters.
Right. And I don't think we need to abandon our humanity and our warmth and our empathy in order to be objective or logical. I think that the two can work together,
Spock is, in fact, incredibly loving and empathetic.
So
he is the yes, exactly. They are the sort of most pure fictional logic characters, and they may not always express empathy and emotion in the way that it's generally coded. But Spock loves him, Kirk. And it is the needs of the many. And all that, and I think that's where the sacrifice play comes from, is having empathy. You are only self-sacrificing when you care about others and value other points of view. And there is incredible strength in that. And I think, and Farscape always co-signs that is strength, because that is Erin's journey, is learning to value those things. So I found it, I love seeing Erin interact with Randy and John, because he's everything she was taught to be in the person, in the guise, in the face of the person that she loves, even if she hasn't said it yet, who's been teaching her to value all the things that Neander John is the pure expression of. The
that's great
emotion and kindness, and that means that he struggles to control his impulses.
His impulses, yeah.
But he's also like he's ready to make the sacrifice. He is wise in the end. He sees this is not my time and place.
Yeah, in a way, he was like the most evolved out of them, really.
just because he's a big hairy ape man doesn't mean he's not smart.
Yeah.
And you know, there are different kinds of smarts. We know that from Dargo.
Yep.
Right.
So
I did feel that like the idea or the concept of Randy and John was a little cynical. Like typically from what I've seen of sci-fi, it tends to be more hopeful about us and our future and what's going to happen. I could be totally wrong there, but that's what I've seen. So I thought that the idea that because from the get-go, you can tell that like he's got a large brain and his brain's almost like protruding through his skull. So it sort of implies that he's like smarter, and even says that he can he's figuring out things that he's been thinking about for months and all that stuff. So it sort of implies that at least in the writing, that as we evolve, we're going to become less and less humane, I guess. And I don't really like that idea. I think that's very cynical, but it's not really co-signing it though, because the ending, you know.
In fact, John expresses that exact worry at the very end of the episode, that, you know, if that's the future, I don't like it. And it's Chiana who spent most of her time with John, and who is in a lot of ways one of the most impulsive and id-like characters in the crew, who rebuts that. And she goes, it's just one possible future.
Yeah. Like the ending definitely, I went like phew, because at first I'm like, this is really cynical and I really don't like this idea. But yeah, and then they sort of turned it around. But it's sort of someone just said it. I can't remember which one of you just said it, but it's a possibility. Like it's one possibility. Yeah, so that's kind of realistic, I guess. It could go either way. Yeah.
I think the thing with good science fiction is the optimism is cautious. Because we could have solved the scarcity situation and have magical everything, and perfect society. But you know, even if we got that, even when we show that usually it's important to show that takes work.
Yep.
That's a lot of what DS9 is about. Why it's a more satisfying story.
Okay.
It's easy to be a saint in paradise.
Yes. Or there's the Babylon 5 version, which is we are repeating patterns, but each time we have a chance to learn from them.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, we can choose to do better.
Yep.
Even if it's little choices and it takes us a long time to learn. So I think it's one of those things, like if you're too optimistic about the future and too it's all sunshine and roses, it doesn't have any applicability to today.
Right. And it almost doesn't mean anything either. Like it's I don't know.
Progressivism can be its own. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's fine. Go for
it. Progressivism can be its own kind of trap as well, because it's very easy to imagine that we've made it.
Yes,
and
presentism.
I think often about kind of a lot of the post-racial messaging in 90s America of, you know, we've solved it, we're good, we're fine, and so we stopped working on it in a lot of ways, and now we're here and clearly are not fine, clearly didn't solve it. And part of the hard pill to swallow is we can get to the point where most of our social problems have been solved, but it will be long after any of us imagine that we've already arrived at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And none of us have the opportunity or really the I guess freedom in a lot of ways to not continue to strive for that. We have the responsibility to continue to strive for that, because we can never suspect that we've already made it, that we've already arrived.
The end of history idea of, particularly of the 90s, but that, you know, anytime we think we're the end point of evolution or the end point of existence or whatever, it just blows up in our faces, because it just means there's so much shit we haven't seen.
Mm-hmm.
because there will always be problems to work on.
And evolution by its very nature doesn't stop. It keeps going.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's no end point.
Evolution is, I mean, sorry to anyone who believes that there is a invisible hand of some kind, but I don't think, like, I certainly don't ascribe to that. So it's not like we are being guided to a place. It's just like it is random mutations, and some are effective and we get more of them, or just interesting and we get more of them. And some, and if something is harmful, it will often be like it's not planned. It just kind of is. But we have a tendency to think like, just like Randy and John does, we have a tendency to think, well, I am superior. How do I know this? Well, you see, I am judging. And like the Victorian period is one of the places where you see an incredible amount of that kind of thinking, which is incredibly damaging. Because well, obviously white culture is superior. Well, we're the ones doing the judging. And then also all of the biases that you have just kind of get presumed to be objective.
It's you also mentioned the needs of the many. I've gotten into a few arguments in online Trek forums about how to apply that philosophy, because it comes that quote comes from Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, where, spoilers I guess, where Spock is trying to push Kirk into being who he thinks Kirk is supposed to be. And also at the very end of the film, ultimately decides that Spock decides that he is the only one who can save the ship. And so he sacrifices himself. He decides that the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, or the one. And that's uses his dying breath to explain it to Kirk like that. And the number of times that I have seen or heard that philosophy applied outwardly as a justification for subjugation boggles my mind, where folks are like, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, so the few need to sacrifice for the many.
Yeah.
And the
strict
point,
utilitarianism.
The whole point is that Spock made the choice for himself, just like Id John did ultimately in this episode. Id John ultimately made the choice to sacrifice himself for the rest of the crew.
And there is the antithesis, which is they spend the next two movies teaching us that sometimes the needs of the one outweigh the needs of the many.
That's true.
When they choose.
Because like if it's not a choice, it's just straight up murder. Like it's
eugenics.
It's not a sacrifice. It's a murder. It's eugenics. Yeah, that's not. No.
And speaking of naming the uncomfortable thing, Id John in this episode, Encino John or Cave John, is basically treated like a lower life form because he lacks intelligence, which is
I love how Chiana treated him. Sorry, Josh, I just wanted to say that. Yeah,
that's a classic tenet of that kind of eugenics, where the folks with diminished mental capacity are treated as less than by anybody else, when that's entirely fascist.
As a disabled person, I've seen that way too much. Sorry, Sarah.
Totally. And also, like, speaking as a neurodivergent person, how do we know he's less intelligent? Who's doing the judging on what intelligence is here?
Exactly. Like, the most intelligent person living on this planet could be somebody from an Amazonian tribe. Like academics is not intelligence. There is a big difference. This stuff gets me fired up.
This is another thing about evolution. It is adaptation to the situation you are in. Neanderthals were actually very intelligent and were adapted to their environment. And speaking of eugenics, they died because Homo sapiens came in, and we don't know the exact things, and there are traces of Neanderthal DNA to this day in the human genome, but mostly the species died out because Homo sapiens arrived. Not probably not the first, definitely not the last species to become extinct because Homo sapiens arrived in their area.
Isn't there like a couple a year or something like that statistically? Like there's like a frighteningly like large amount of extinctions happening all the time.
Oh, absolutely. And there are so many cultures that have been eradicated because someone else came along
and some of them willfully as well, like they've been forcibly eradicated.
Yeah,
absolutely. We are still and genocide comes in more than one form, because we are still finding the bodies of children. It is in the thousands in Canada in the residential schools, because there was they wanted to make them adapt to British to Canadian life or die. And they died of neglect, so many of them. And yeah, it all comes from this logic of, I am the one who can judge intelligence. I don't see you, and I don't see any value in you and the way you express yourself. And so I am just going to take what I want and use you how I will, because I think that superior intelligence gives me that. And that is eugenics. That is colonialism.
Straight up.
That is the root of so much harm.
And it is about expression too, as we also see throughout the episode that id John may be at least as intelligent as ego John. He lacks expressive abilities. He has trouble pronouncing his own name.
Yeah,
but he clearly knows who he is, like, because he he puts on the flight suit pants so that he doesn't just run around naked and stuff. And he
that's a cool detail.
He says Pip to Chiana to verify that it's John.
Yeah.
So it's just his expression that is hampered in some form or fashion, probably by the prosthetic teeth, but he's at least as intelligent as ego John.
And we watch him adapt. He tries to say Chiana and Crichton, and it just doesn't work. And so that's when he starts being like Pip, John, and just like, what can I say? And later we see that he does develop the ability. Maybe it's a writer convenience, but it works, that he develops the ability to express himself better.
Yeah, nothing felt cheap in this episode to me. I was also very impressed because Farscape, like we've seen it quite a few times now, where it has a great idea but doesn't quite express it properly or doesn't quite say anything about it. But I feel like all the themes and ideas in this episode were fully realized, and it was a complete coherent thought, and I really appreciated that, because that's difficult to do in like a 44-minute episode. Like when I say that they've failed in the past, it's not necessarily like I'm not talking down to anybody. It's a difficult thing, and shit, the writers and everybody involved in this show, they've done something that I haven't done. So like I'm not talking down on them at all, but I was really impressed with how well they fleshed out the ideas here. Yeah, same.
Yeah. They've got 45 minutes, and they've got also a certain amount of development time, writing time, and this one particularly, we got another interesting bottle episode. This was done as a bottle episode.
Yeah,
I caught that. Yeah.
This is the first one with no guest stars. I mean, even as I said in like it's one of the producers is quoted as saying, well, even in a bottle episode, we couldn't we did is it really a bottle episode when you got this much makeup on the on the actor. But yeah, this is the thing. Even when Farscape does bottle episodes, the last one we saw was Crackers Don't Matter.
Right.
And it is specifically because we've got this 3-parter coming up that has a bunch of location shoots and
okay.
So they need. So here we go with
budget and
yeah. And this was produced after that, but released before it. So, and it doesn't really make a difference to the order we watched it in.
Yeah. Okay.
You will see the next the 3-parter when we start on in the next episode. But yeah,
I'm quite excited.
So yeah, it's a bit like Crackers Don't Matter of like, okay, we've got limitations. What can we do? And Farscape really works well to having those delimitations.
Because it doesn't feel limited at all, and that's that. I'm really impressed knowing that now, because that's just it doesn't feel like it's lacking anything. And like I said, it's a fully realized and fleshed out idea. So props to him, man. It's amazing.
And a really fun idea too. I loved the scene where all of the Johns are able to hear the transmission from the green sphere. Like that was really cool and just really well. And the voice, I guess, effect of the green sphere was very Borg-like, but not in a way that sounded like they were ripping off the Borg. Like it was just really cool, really well done. And I love that scene. I was just like, that was cool. Fuck yeah.
So we've talked about a lot about John. Anything to talk about on any of the other characters?
I've just got one line here. It's only a little detail, but I loved Dargo wanting to protect Chiana when all hell broke loose. I loved that he was very like just worried about her and wanting to protect her. I think I'm warming up to that ship now.
What did we decide to call it? Chiago?
Yeah.
Chiago, yeah.
Yeah, and he was being very protective, was Dargo, in this episode, because he also I love his speech to John. The I will back you up, but also, okay, buddy, you've got to make a decision now, or So I thought that was really just a really good friendship moment.
Agreed.
And he wouldn't let John do it with if John did make the decision to sacrifice John, he wasn't going to let him do it alone.
Yeah, that was nice.
Yeah. I liked the pairings this episode. That we got Chiana with John, we got Aaron with Super Ego John, and most of it was Dargo with Ego John or regular John. I feel like that was a really cool opportunity to kind of do some character reflection as well. Like you were talking about earlier, Sara, Aaron getting to pay back a lot of the growth and empathy that she's learned, and Chiana actually having to curb her own impulses in order to help John was really cool. And then Dargo just being like ultimate bro.
Yeah.
Bro, if you're going to murder a version of yourself, bro, I'm going to be there right beside you, bro.
Yeah. And Rigel being entirely self-interested.
As usual.
Yeah, I really felt the stakes here. Again, just a well fleshed out thing. And I said before that I'd probably let everybody die. Let me clarify. That's what I like to think I would do, but faced with that, I don't actually know what I would do, because I've never been faced with anything like that. But yeah, the idea of just sacrificing anyone, I don't know, it just seems wrong to me.
Well, and that was an interesting point in the episode too, that came up at the end when John was kind of lamenting the whole thing after it was all over, where he was beating himself up for having even considered sacrificing, Neander John, and Chiana was there, and she was kind of being helpful and loving and supportive. And I don't know, I guess I was thinking a lot about how easy it is for a lot of us to get down on ourselves for bad thoughts or bad urges or bad wants or bad desires, but that ultimately it's our actions and our deeds that really help to show our true character. And so John,
spot on.
John changing his mind and John going up against himself in that final showdown, which was really cool as well. Was just really it got me right here.
It's very John to have a monologue off at gunpoint.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. One other thing I will pick up notice is that who did we see a split with who never split? Did you notice? We saw two characters split.
Pilot and Moya.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pilot was Moya is always self-sacrificing.
Mm-hmm.
Pilot was being self-interested.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
And I thought that was really interesting to have that split.
I also thought it was really, really cool that we got some shots of Pilot from a really different angle that we don't see.
Yep.
Yeah.
I feel like that was kind of playing into the theme and what was going on. I don't know, because it was just different, you know?
There were a few shots like this.
Yeah, I think the director really entered in the spirit of things. She does a lot of her IMDb has a lot of one-offs. Although there's a whole lot with the Flying Doctors.
Oh yeah. That's an Aussie show, isn't it?
Yeah, a lot of it is very Australian, ordinary, regular TV. So I think she was really flexing her muscles a bit and having some fun with the directing.
Yeah, clearly. Yeah.
But one thing I'll say in response to your talking about sacrifice. In the story, we have a sacrifice having to mean, submitting to being a science experiment or dying, we don't know which. But in life, there are lots of ways in which we can, and I do see you, both of you, doing the needs of the many, outweighing the needs of the me in a lot of little ways. Because in real life, it usually is a lot of little ways. Think about all the things we did in the last couple years. The sacrifices that we all made for our fellows.
That's true.
Yeah.
There it's not, those aren't, meaningless because they aren't throw yourself, they aren't, throw yourself on the nuclear reactor, where it is annoying. Let's be honest. It's annoying to wear a mask, but we do it because for ourselves and also for others, and there's a whole lot of little things like that where like being annoyed. I as an autistic person, having thing on face, it irritates me more than it does to most people. But that's not real. That's not a huge thing in the scheme of things. But there were so many things that people sacrificed, every day for months. Businesses
and people's livelihoods got put on hold, and in some cases were destroyed.
Yeah, and a lot of choices people made. People who, the essential workers risked themselves every day. Yeah. My sister went into a hospital.
Life you could have saved
every day. So they're like from the health workers, from the grocery workers. I just we're currently in Canada just dealing with the report from that stupid convoy of people who chose the Randian side. And did a lot of harm. It's important, I think, to think about the fact that, making some sacrifices, is something to be recognized how important that is.
I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's not always about these big grand sacrifices. Like little things count too. Yeah. Like as I just said, we could have saved people's lives. We don't know, and it's a good thing we don't know. It was definitely a big thing for me of I mean, I'm like high risk myself, and luckily I've had it twice and I've been okay. But I just kept thinking, like, what if some little old lady got sick because of me? Like, I wouldn't want to. I don't want something like that on my conscience, even though I wouldn't be able to directly trace something back to me, but it's a possibility, you know. It's yeah.
Same. I'm low risk, but absolutely same.
Yeah, I am high risk, but also like I was in a position to be able to isolate, but you know, had I gotten sick, which thankfully I didn't, I would have required a lot more care resources because of my weight and issues.
Right.
And so like there's this, you know, I am, for the record, entitled to those resources. I know you don't get to say I'm not. Unfortunately, the system does. Which is a difficult thing, is that there was a lot of the resources, them saying that we weren't worthy of the resources. But, you know, it was an understanding that, you know, is one of those, you know, was my sister, who's a doctor, talks about it as like doing the sort of the math, the risk math. You know, what risks you will risk for yourself, what risks you will put at other people at, what, you know. And when we were talking about like I worry about the resources for triage, there was an understanding that, okay, like no, make sure I don't get it, because I'm going to take up too much thing. And I'm not saying that to be like, woo me, but I'm just like, I know a lot of people make
it's a
those
reality.
judgments.
It's, yeah.
You know, a lot of, and
we've been talking about eugenics a bit. Like I saw people at anti-lockdown protests, like holding signs saying "sacrifice the weak." You know, let the disabled people die because they don't can contribute. Stuff like that. And as a disabled person, to see that was just like crushing. I live in Melbourne, Australia, and we had some of the longest and harshest lockdowns in the world. Like they were very long. I think we had 3 or 4 separate lockdowns, and one of them was like a couple of months or something like that. I don't know. I can't remember now, but very, very extensive lockdowns. And it's easy for me to say, because I was in a position where I could do it without suffering too much. But I was glad to do it, and I was glad that we were doing it, because at the end of the day, human life trumps whatever else. You know, that to me is the most important thing. And I think people protesting that it's just selfishness. It's the eugenics. It's the like the what I should have the freedom to spread this around if I want to. Like, it's not going to make me seriously ill, so fuck it. And you know, it's just shitty. Anyway, we're getting off topic here.
Well, I was going to bring it back by saying that that's exactly the choice that Super Ego John made when he decked Aaron.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that was him saying, like, I'm capable of making these hard choices, like punching this woman in the nose. I can do those things because of my superior intellect. And then I'll make the next hard choice where I murder somebody. I can. That's the sacrifice I can make. Is harming someone else. This episode
was much more relevant than I thought. Wow.
Well, these are universal themes.
Yeah, of course.
But I definitely you expressing your feeling of it, because in the convoy protesters, they were yelling at healthcare workers, like harassing people who were saving lives. It's just
my favorite, though, are the wild conspiracy theories you hear about vaccines and stuff. Some of that shit is bonkers, man. Like, so crazy, it's funny. Like, you can't even get angry at it because it's just funny.
Yeah. So we can all learn the all-important lesson of the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one.
Right. Of course.
For those listening, that involved a gesture of the
Just remember, folks, your place on this planet is directly correlated to how much you can contribute physically.
I gotta get a farm.
Yeah. So yes, we are saying that Randy and John.
We're saying the opposite of that.
Is not the future. He is an obnoxious twit, and we are glad he got bonked on the head. Although apparently he has a paper skull because that killed him.
Well, his brain is right there.
True.
Like you can see the spaghetti.
Yeah.
And no matter your situation, you were valued, you were loved, and you were very much needed.
Even if you're naked and hairy.
Yes.
Yep. Especially if you're naked and hairy. Especially.
After why not?
This is a really weird, like, after school special way that we're trying to wrap this up.
It really is. It really is. Yeah. So yes, we really enjoyed this fun, weird little episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. It got philosophical thoughts on sacrifice and life and all that stuff.
Yeah, we've been getting a lot of bangers lately, minus that Litigar one. But yeah, there's been some good stuff.
Well, they tried.
Well, that's the thing. Again, I think we said in that episode, it's a good idea to an extent, but they just didn't do it all that well.
Yeah, they always try. So so that leads me on to the next episode is Kiss Is But a Kiss from the Look at the Princess trilogy.
Okay.
Oh. Okay.
So that is where we are going next. And I think we already did the Do You Have Any Thoughts on that? But we will see how you like it. We will be meeting a new civilization, and we will be seeing some interesting faces.
We haven't done favorite parts yet.
Yes. So with that, favorite part of the episode.
My favorite part, I love the whole climax and Crichton willing to sacrifice himself, but then Neander John jumping in and sacrificing himself with future Crichton. Love it. So good.
Same, except a little bit earlier in the climax. I really liked the monologue off between Super Ego John and Ego John.
Yeah.
I don't think it'll surprise anyone that my favorite bit is the bonk to the head.
So we've all kind of got the same favorites, just different parts of it.
Yeah, I mean, not only because I just like that as a solution to not an actual real life solution, obviously, but in fiction, very entertaining solution to those kinds of twats. But also because this episode does remind me of the Buffy episode, Be Your Bad. And so the bonk on the head reminds me of Parker getting a bonk on the head, which is the extremely satisfying. One of the most satisfying moments in that season of Buffy.
I love the look on her face when she does it too. Just like
Okay, so I think that's us. And Look at the Princess starts next time in 2 weeks. And we will, as I said, we will be doing the 3 episodes separately because it's just too much. And they do divide neatly into 3. So we will be watching the first one. So do you want to tell the folks how they can find you?
You can find me on Twitter at lackofsurprise1. That's all one word with a number 1 at the end. You can find me on Instagram at Jack Kramme, lowercase. You can also find me on Discord on our Discord server. Josh, what about you, sir?
You can find me sitting on a bench at the corner of the imagination in a dream, just waiting for you. And also Instagram at Josh Gosdin.
I'm like
Sara?
So uncomfortable, but slightly aroused. I'm sorry, was that too far?
I'm so happy to be recording with you two again.
Exactly what I'm going for. Sorry, where can folks find you?
You can find me on YouTube at the Fat Culture Critic. Although the actual URL is still Costume Codex because they haven't.
I think you can change that.
Nope. Since the last update,
really?
you can't. So hopefully there will be a new update when I will be able to.
Because you work. Yeah. Damn it.
Yeah. But you can definitely find me by searching the Fat Culture Critic. I'm also on Twitter, probably until the lights go off or the final song sings.
The Titanic sinks. Yep.
Yeah. My heart will go.
You're here. There's no. Sorry, Josh. I'm so sorry. Actually, no, I'm not sorry. Not one bit. I'm so thankful that you guys put up with me. Thank you so much.
Put up with you. We love you, you silly goose.
We embrace you.
Yeah.
There's no tolerance here.
We would absolutely hold the good of the you over the needs of the us.
The listeners.
We gotta go, y'all.
Yeah, we've got to actually show Jack these films.
Sorry, yes, we do. But Sara's getting into word salad.
Yes, Sara's getting into word salad. So with that, we will see you in 2 weeks. And to the patrons, you can see some of us react to Look at the Princess. We will be recording a reaction.
You can.
So thank you to our patrons as always. Bye-bye.
Bye.
She does it twice.
Yeah. Want beer.
So the message of the day is beer foamy.
Yeah. The message of the day is if you're confused by our constant Buffy references, you should watch the show because it's not going to stop.
It really won't.
It's also a great show, so check it out.
It's a great show.
Although Beer Bad is not a banger, but it is kind of fun for a few reasons, one of which is bump to the head.
Yeah. Parker bad.
Bad Parker.
It's going to be okay, guys.
Beer,
we're all good.
Beer foamy.
I just want to reach out right now and pat you both on the head.